Yeah, because I think most people and most companies I see, they create this really nice, words on the wall. These are all the values. These are all the things I'm doing, but they don't live it. So it needs to be imbued into the DNA of everything you do. Every single decision in your business is driven by your purpose. So if part of your purpose is around sustainability, then your whole supply chain needs to be using sustainable products. This drives everything you do. So I find it falls apart when it's just words on the wall rather than people are living it and doing it and being it every day. So that, you live your purpose, and that shapes everything your business does and every single decision you make. And that might make some of the decisions that you make aren't financially as viable as they could be, but you're being authentic to that vision and what you
Hello everyone, I'm Suzanne Paul and you're watching my YouTube channel all about women of influence. I'm interviewing women that I find to be super inspiring and influential in my life, and I think you'll find them interesting and inspiring too. My guest today is Julia Felton. I've known Julia for a few months and she was the very amazing and courageous and elegant host of the Do Good and Make Money Summit at the beginning of February 2021. And I say she was courageous because she shared herself really openly with the audience, and she also asked some amazing questions. I was lucky enough to feature on one of her panels, and it was just an amazing conversation. So hello Julia, thanks for joining me today. How are you?
Well, Suzanne, thank you so much for inviting me onto your YouTube channel. It's so exciting. Thank you.
Really, thank you. I have to tell you, actually, and this is a little bit, you're actually my first recording. So thank you for popping the cherry, so to speak.
We've all got to start somewhere, right?
We have got to start somewhere. I love the phrase,
popping the cherry.
So there we go. I just was looking at my Facebook feed as we say that, and I noticed today is the 12th of March 2021 as we record this, and I just noticed that I did my first ever live on Facebook on the 12th of March 2018. So there must be something about cherry popping for me on this day, and I'm saying nothing more than that. There we go.
I love that.
So yeah, so Julia, I invited you because I saw you did the panel and 7 days of back-to-back interviewing of people and sharing and panels on the Do Good and Make Money Summit, and you were just telling me before we started recording today that what it is that you love doing. So what is your area of influence and what do you love? Well,
as a typical entrepreneur, I love to do loads of things, and that's the great thing about entrepreneurship, right? Is that we can have the variety, and that's also the downfall, because sometimes I don't focus on one thing for long enough. But my real passion is leadership development, helping create high performance teams, and doing that out in nature. So I love being out in nature and working with my horses to help unleash hidden potential in people. And I also love to do that through interviewing, I'm an author of 4 different books, and through facilitating. So that's why I love doing the summit. It was, to be honest, I hadn't really interviewed that many people before I did the summit. And like you said, I had 7 days back to back of interviews with people, and I loved it. I absolutely loved it. I loved hearing everyone's stories and strategies and tactics to help you do good and make money. And that's another passion of mine as well. How can we help business become a force for good and do something in the world? Because right now, I think we can all agree that the world is a bit of a mess as we're coming out of COVID here, or hopefully emerging from COVID.
Yeah.
And I just think business is going to be the vehicle that changes everything. So how do we create businesses that are sustainable and create a real impact in their local communities and, support the UN Sustainable Development Goals? So in fact, everything I do is around impact and purpose, whether it is with the leaders and my horses in the field, or whether it's with coaching clients and training. It's all about how do we ignite the hidden potential in people to be their best and have their best impact in the world.
Wow. And you casually there mentioned your horses. And like, I'm just really fascinated about how, because you do have horses. I mean, you live in the UK, but in the wilds of Yorkshire, quite rural, as opposed to me who lives in the heart of London. Yeah, so how do you like facilitate leadership development with your horses? Like, tell us more about that.
Yeah. So I do have 4 horses. 3 of them are rescue horses,
Oh,
and I
wow.
really got into this work because I had a horse and I was no longer able to ride him. He's still going. He's 28 years old this year, Toby. He was my first ever horse. So like I didn't grow up around horses. I didn't have horses when I was a kid. I bought my first horse when I was working at Arthur Andersen, and Arthur Andersen was imploding around me through the Enron scandal. So
Yeah.
for people who don't know, Arthur Andersen, you would know, having worked in the city, was one of the top 5 accountancy firms in the
Yeah.
world. And through a scandal and actually lack of ethics, probably, the whole company came down in a period of 9 months. And it was the first time I realized that a business wasn't going to look after me, because, I'd always been taught, Julia, go out, work for a good company, work hard, they'll look after you for the rest of your life. That was kind of the mantra given to me by my parents. And of course, what I realized in that moment was, my division, which wasn't an accountancy division. I did run a specialist hotels and leisure research team specializing in big data. So not part of the accountancy core business.
Mm-hmm.
And they were about to really potentially make us all redundant. And that was really kind of my light bulb moment, that this big company won't look after me. So that's when I bought Toby. And he got to a stage about 10 years later when I couldn't ride him, and I was looking for something else to do. And I had started to realize that when after I had bought him, I didn't know how to look after him, right? I was like, oh, wow. I just buy a horse, I know what to do. And I didn't. So
be courageous there, right there. Go on.
I'd done some training with Monty Roberts, and I'd read one of his books, and it was all about the life lessons we could learn from horses. And then I had that light bulb moment that Toby was teaching me my best leadership and business lessons ever. The problem was, in those days when I was in the corporate world, I didn't have the manual to understand what he was teaching me. And years later, what I did learn, when I reflected on it, was that I had a whole summer when I couldn't catch my horse. I was working all week, corporate hamster wheel, so at the weekend after I'd done my house, I'd walk into the field like this and try and catch my horse, totally focused on what needed to happen. And he just run away every single weekend. Both days he'd run away. I could never catch him. And even the best organic carrots with green tops didn't work for him. And
wow.
what I discovered years later was, actually, he was like, it's all about you, Julia. You're coming to ride me. You've not got any time. This is not about relationship. It's not about connection. This is all about your agenda. And you're scary and intimidating, and your energy's all off. And I was like, wow. And the irony was, when I reflected back on it, at the same time, my team were telling me I was scary and intimidating, because I was so laser focused on getting the business built, on what was going on in the division I was running. I wasn't very good at social niceties and spending time building rapport with people. And my horse had been telling me that, but my team weren't brave enough to tell me that.
Wow. What an amazing story, and what a lesson that horses can teach. And that's like the beauty of like working in harmony with nature. Like, that's amazing. Because one of the things that has been like I've been inquiring into recently is like, what is it to be a leader? And you're obviously an expert in that, but it's like, so and somebody accused me yesterday of like treating the team that I'm working with like an army. And I'm like, well, of course I want them to be like an army, because armies are really effective and they move collectively. But actually it loses the quality of the relationship and the connection. And so how do we, how do we create that kind of, and I liken it to a cycling team where everyone's like in a slipstream, like moving together. And how do you create that kind of effortless, like,
I think
line?
yeah. So I think, yeah, exactly. And I think the first thing that happens is that you've all got to have that shared vision and purpose. So that's why I'm really passionate about helping people discover their purpose and helping really clear on the purpose and impact they want to make. Because if we're all pulling in the same direction, it becomes much easier. But I also then think there's a piece around empowering people. So people don't actually want to be micromanaged. And it's like, how do we create the space where they know the vision, they know what needs to happen, they know what their role is, but we give them the flexibility and freedom to get to it. So I often use an example. I said, like, tomorrow, if I needed to get to your house tomorrow, Suzanne, there's a number of ways I could do it, right? I could drive, I could, take the train, I could get on my horse, I could fly. There's lots of different ways we can get from A to B. And I think as leaders, we have to recognize that the way our team might get from A to B isn't the same way we might get from A to B, but we're still going to get the same result. And oftentimes I find that the team have a better way of getting to A to B than my way, that's more effective, more efficient. So for me, it's about it's creating that space so that they can make their own decisions. And of course, you've got to have checks and balances in there along the way. If they go off track and all of a sudden they start going to Scotland instead of to London, you've got to be able to rein them back. But I think starting with the clear vision and purpose you're all going really is the start of that. And then, as I said, empowering them and then staying really connected to them and knowing that you're there to support them along the journey, and not being a leader that just abdicates and says, go from A to B and, I'm going to the pub for a week and I'll see you next week. Because that doesn't help them either. They need that support around them to do it. And, the horse won't go with you unless you have that clarity of where you want to go and that focus. Because from a horse's perspective, he will only be with you and he will give over the leadership position and become a follower if you have the clarity of where you want to go. Because his biggest fear is that a mountain lion's going to come and eat him, right? Because he's a prey animal.
Yeah.
In some ways, our team are a little bit the same as I experienced during Enron, where, our team wants safety and security and they're looking for the leader to provide that. And that partly is the juxtaposition we've got going on right now, because leaders don't necessarily know what's going to happen in the future because we're living in such an uncertain and volatile world. But all the leaders can do is be authentic and say, this is where we're heading. We might need to change as things come on board, but be authentic and tell people that, because people just want to be empowered to have knowledge to make decisions along the way.
Wow. That's got so, like, I'm sitting here and I'm listening to what you're saying. That what you just said is so profound in so many areas of life. And I'm like, that's exactly what it is to run a business. That's what it is to run a home, like manage a family, like manage any sort of a team, whatever size, in whatever industry, like really. So there's one thing that you said, and I'm just really aware of the time, and I don't believe in doing long videos because I know that you don't like to watch them. So we're going to keep it a little bit short. So we are coming to the end, but
sure.
You mentioned about vision and purpose. And one of the things that I notice is that you can create this like really super inspiring vision and purpose that really enrolls people and they get like really on board with it. And they're like, yes, yes, yes. And then it goes really out so far. It disappears really quickly. Mm-hmm. So just before we complete, I just wondered, do you have a little tip for us about how to keep that vision and purpose alive for the team? Like how to keep them continually engaged in that conversation? Because that is something I'm like, I don't know how to do that at all.
Yeah, because I think most people and most companies I see, they create this really nice, words on the wall. These are all the values. These are all the things I'm doing, but they don't live it. So it needs to be imbued into the DNA of everything you do. Every single decision in your business is driven by your purpose. So if part of your purpose is around sustainability, then your whole supply chain needs to be using sustainable products. This drives everything you do. So I find it falls apart when it's just words on the wall rather than people are living it and doing it and being it every day. So that, you live your purpose, and that shapes everything your business does and every single decision you make. And that might make some of the decisions that you make aren't financially as viable as they could be, but you're being authentic to that vision and what you're seeking to achieve.
See
Anytime
that's
you go, when you
go
go off
on.
tangent, that's when people, when you go off tangent and you do something that's at odds with the vision, that's when people are like, well, they don't really mean this. They're not being, ethical around it. It's not the true thing. They're just saying it for the sake of it. We call it greenwashing. They're just greenwashing a vision, just putting it out there for the sake of it looks good. They're not living it. So it's all about living it and imbuing it into everything you do within the business.
So what I can hear, like you use the word authenticity in what you just said, and so it's like being congruent and authentic with the vision and the purpose. That's what I can really hear. And on that very powerful note, we're going to call it a day for today. And just, you can find out more about Julia in the comments below, where in the description of this video, where we've posted links to find out and connect with Julia directly. Thank you so much for joining us today on my first YouTube channel video. Well, it's not the first one on my YouTube channel, but of this series with women of influence and impact. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you so much for inviting me. Bye-bye.
Bye.